Hello, everyone, and welcome to what is essentially an open letter to Atomic Mass Games and their dev department. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Oliver Potnell. I am the present X-Wing World Champion. I've been playing X-Wing competitively since about 2014. I am a lover of the game. Yes, my background is competitive, but I had to learn the game from a standpoint, same as everyone else. I've spent the last 5 years travelling all over the world playing X-Wing, and it's safe to say I am fairly committed and invested in the game. I love this game. It's made me many, many friends all across the world. And that's the reason that I feel like I needed to make this. I watched the recent stream, and it was nice to get some feedback from the game designers to see what their view and core belief of what X-Wing should be. And as they've said themselves, their view is that X-Wing should be a game of both players getting stuck in, getting to the engagement as quickly as possible, not playing a game of cat and mouse. They want it to be action-packed. They want it to be shooting. They want it to be like the dogfights in the game. That is their philosophy, and that is their look at game design. The frustration that I have is, it was mentioned a couple of times in the stream that this was going to be improving the amount of choices that players would have in the game. You want to be making more fun and more interesting choices. And I am seriously concerned that the changes that are being brought into the game are not only reducing the amount of choices that you have to make in the game, and reducing, not even talking about the correct choices, they're just straight up reducing the amount of choices that you are allowed to make. And I worry that AMG's idea of making X-Wing a game that is going to last for the next 10 to 15 years just isn't going to happen with the present design changes in the game. It's going to be a case of the game dying out quite quickly because people are just going to get bored. Regardless of the fact that it's going to turn into a game that isn't that interesting competitively, which clearly I am biased about and I'm invested in, I don't think it's going to be a game that people are going to want to carry on playing. And I'm going to lay out my reasons why, and hopefully that'll be interesting for the game designers to hear. First of all, reasons where there is skill in X-Wing. It's maneuvers. It's the core of the game. Dials. It's been this for a real long time, that you choose your maneuver and you're able to choose where your ship goes based on your decisions. That isn't going to change, but the way that you do that is you're suddenly not going to be able to make as many informed decisions. That was the point. That was the point of these changes. But with these decisions that are being taken away, you didn't have information in the first place. You didn't know where your opponent was going to go, but at least you knew the rules of the game. At this point, neither of you know what each other is going to do, and it turns into a bit of a prisoner's dilemma, but we'll get onto more of that later. The other thing that you can do is you can choose your actions. Now, this one is largely unaffected by the changes that AMG are going to make. It is still the case that if you have a higher initiative number, you get more information, and therefore you get to take your actions with more information. In terms of choosing your actions and the ability to take away your actions, it moves on to blocking, and I'm a little bit concerned about the possible changes to blocking and how that's going to happen, but blocking now makes very little difference to the game. If you assume that some of the changes are going to come in, as AMG have described, I know that they are still hypothetical at this point, but Road was hypothetical a week ago, and suddenly it has appeared as a locked-in concept, and these concepts are needing to be done by Christmas, so surely they need to be thought of fairly quickly. If you block something, you remove its ability to take an action, and you also remove its ability to take any more decisions, and that's being removed from the game because that feels bad. Well, of course it feels bad. You're not playing the game as you should because you've made a mistake. You've gone to where your opponent has managed to outplay you, and because of that, either you've made a flying mistake or your opponent has outplayed you. That is rewarding for your opponent, and it teaches you not to make that mistake. That's not something that should be removed from the game. You're learning a lesson by doing that. If you want to get that action, it's a reward. Congratulations, you've put your ship in the correct decision. You get that reward. Now, you don't know whether or not you're going to be the blocker or the blockee, because when the dials change, you can commit to blocking if you want. Okay, I'm going to throw my TIE fighter forwards at you, but my opponent's TIE fighter has just gone forwards at me. And if we end up in the same space, it's no longer a case of, oh, I was moving first. I know I was moving first. So I've guessed where my opponent's gone. And I know AMG are really hot on this. You want player interaction. I've read my opponent's body signals. I have seen how he's been flying for the last couple of turns. And suddenly, I've been able to use all of that information to place my ship where he's gone. And my reward for that is I block his ship. I take away its actions. I make it easier to kill from all of my other ships. That's an interesting game design. That's an interesting game mechanic. Well, what happens now with Road? Well, if I decide that I'm going to go where my opponent's going to go, I don't know whether or not my Initiative 1 TIE Fighter is going to block his Initiative 1 TIE Fighter. I have no idea. Maybe his Initiative 1 TIE Fighter is going to move first and block my ship. What does that do? Well, that leaves me with a choice. I can risk losing my TIE Fighter, because if my TIE Fighter gets blocked, it will be actionless, sitting in front of an entire swarm, and now my ship dies. Because I predicted something correctly, I'm getting punished, which doesn't seem like something that would encourage doing that repeatedly. So what's going to happen is a couple of times you're going to get the reward, a couple of times you're not going to get the reward, and it's going to feel bad. So you're probably going to stop doing that, because you know that, okay, if I just go short, if I don't commit to that long, fast block, if I sit back and just take my focus action or take my target lock action if I have an X-Wing, I can guarantee that I get to shoot, and that feels better because I'm rolling dice. Hey, I get to roll dice at my opponent. So you reduce the choices in the game, because no one is thinking, oh, I'm going to go and block my opponent, because you're not allowed. You don't get the option to block your opponent, because it might turn into you being bitten by that decision, and it was actually the wrong decision 50% of the time, because you're now rolling dice to decide whether or not you were the blocker or you're getting blocked. Adding in that focus, again, it doesn't really encourage people to block, because, okay, the whole point of blocking was to take away an action, and now my opponent has a focus anyway, and he just shoots me, and cool, it didn't really get anything. And I do understand what AMG is trying to do by taking away the feels bad of blocking, but I don't agree with it. Think about how this mechanic will interact with things that are already in the game. Think about Predator, think about Lone Wolf, these kind of upgrade cards that allow you passive rerolls. What if you loaded out your entire TIE Fighter swarm, your entire X-Wing squad, with these passive rerolls that you could just reroll an attack dice, and then you just pointed your ships forward at your opponent and you didn't care if you crashed? You have a focus token, you have a reroll, and suddenly it didn't matter that you bumped. Dials don't matter anymore. You have less decision, and the game gets less interesting because it's entirely decided on what dice you roll. It's not affected by your decisions, it's just affected by the random chance of rolling a dice, which just is, it seems like it's a bad game mechanic, and it's not going to encourage more people to play the game, because they're not going to feel rewarded for making good decisions. They're going to have fun for about 2 months, and then they're going to put the game on the shelf and it's going to gather dust, and they're not going to buy any expansions. Again, that's sad for the community, and that's sad for the designers, because they're losing money. I'm not going to go into depth on playtesting. I used to be a playtester up until 2018. I'm fully aware of many NDAs and everything that prevents talking about that. What I would say is that based on the present structure and time frame that this has to be turned around, if these are going to be ready by Christmas, I hope is enough to guarantee the health of the game. I think one of the things that is most concerning to me, and again, maybe this is drifting too far away to the competitive side of things, but new players should only take an extremely short amount of time to be as good as players who have spent years playing the game. That is paraphrasing, but that is the implication of the statement that AMG has said in their stream, that they want people to be able to pick this up and immediately be good at the game. And okay, but you want people to be able to continue to play the game, so there needs to be things for them to learn. You can get good at the game of X-Wing in 2 weeks, but you don't have to take away half of the core mechanics of the game to get them to be good at the game of X-Wing in 2 weeks. You put some time in, you practice. It's rewarding because you're learning a skill. It doesn't seem to line up with the want of X-Wing to be popular for years to come. I mean, the whole purpose of this is you want more people to buy into the game. You want the community to grow. You want to sell more core sets and then sell more expansions. That's only going to happen if you get people invested and they actually want to carry on playing. It's only going to happen if there are people playing in stores and people wander along and say, oh cool, that's a really awesome game, where'd you get that? And then your stores can talk about it and encourage more people to buy. If it just gathers dust on someone's shelf, there isn't going to be the interest, there isn't going to be the community appeal, in those local game stores where people go and buy their games, because X-Wing is never going to be played in those game stores. People aren't going to discover X-Wing. There isn't a new core set on the way, so why are they going to buy the game in the first place if the community isn't interested and isn't playing it? So the aim of AMG is to make things exciting and cool, and I'm seeing some people online say, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying these changes, but I'm seeing a huge part of the community that have just seen the soul of the game ripped out for the want of making it quicker. And if we go into the final thing, which is the changes to tournament structure, if you are giving people points for the amount of points that they kill, regardless of the fact that that encourages collusion, because if you meet your friend across the table and you want them to do well, I wiped out 178 points of their list, even though actually what happened was they defeated me 200 to 50. But yeah, I totally killed 178 points, and that's what's on the score sheet, and therefore I beat the two players on the other table who had a really close and exciting game, but only killed 50 points each. And that is a worry, because it changes the way that squad building goes. It removes a couple of styles of play. It's going to remove any form of control pieces from the game. It's going to remove any form of fragile ace pieces from the game that are working on killing things slowly and with finesse. And it encourages people to just deploy opposite each other, point straight at each other, roll some dice, and remove any form of skill and, honestly, enjoyment from the game. Because if you're playing a competitive game, you want to be able to beat your opponent by your own player skill. If you beat your opponent by just getting lucky, then eventually the fun just goes. And the best way that I can compare this, it feels like you've taken poker and you've turned it into Snap. And we all know how many people play the game of Snap. It's very, very popular. But how many people continue to play the game of Snap versus how many people continue to enjoy and play the game of poker? And that's about it. That's what I got. Those are my feelings and my thoughts on the recent changes. I'm aware that this random dial order is going to happen, but I would implore you to please have a serious think about some of the other core mechanics that you're changing this game to make it more fun, because making it more fun temporarily is a very, very, very quick road to cutting players out of the game, removing any interest in the long term, and honestly just seeing the game die within a very short period of time. And I'm very sure that you don't want that to happen, but we as the community also don't want that to happen. So engage. I hope this is helpful feedback, and see you on the flip side.